ago, in a time when dreams whispered before they spoke, the moon sat high in the velvet night sky, watching the earth breathe beneath her silver light. Every night, she drifted over sleeping lands, brushing rooftops with moonbeams and listening quietly to the hush of slumbering souls. But tonight, something stirred in the moon's heart, an ache she could not ignore. For centuries, the kingdom of sleep had welcomed weary travelers into its soft, cloud-laced halls. It was a realm only the truly still could reach, nestled just beyond the eyelids of the world. There, dream weavers floated in silence, painting stories in air, weaving tapestries of memory and hope. But lately, the moon noticed something troubling. Fewer and fewer beings found their way into that gentle kingdom. Children tossed under star-blanketed sheets, hearts buzzing with unspoken fears. Grown-ups stared into glowing rectangles deep into the night, minds burdened by unfinished worries. Even the animals stirred more than they used to, their dreams fluttering and lost like butterflies in wind. The moon knew something had to change. And so, with the glow of 1,000 quiet nights wrapped around her, she decided to do something no celestial body had ever done. She would write a letter. A letter to the kingdom of sleep itself. But letters from the moon were not inked in ordinary script. She would compose her words in light, in lullabies, in drifting shadows. She would craft 80 glowing messages, each a chapter, each a key to open the gates of slumber once more. She turned her gaze to the stars for ink, gathered silence for paper, and let the first letter fall softly to earth, where it landed in a small village that hadn't truly rested in a long time. Nestled in a quiet valley surrounded by drowsy hills, there lay a village called Liltmere. Long ago, the village had been known for its peaceful nights and slow, golden mornings. People would rise with the sun, smiling from the dreams they still carried in their hearts. Grandmothers would hum lullabies while rocking in creaky wooden chairs. Children would giggle in their sleep, whispering stories about flying on clouds and dancing with stars. But something had changed. Now, the village slept with clenched jaws and restless eyes. Lamps glowed deep into the night behind shuttered windows. Even the cats, who once curled up like soft commas on windowsills, now wandered the streets, confused by the moonlight. The village clock tower ticked louder than it used to, as if it, too, was afraid of silence. No one noticed the stillness that blanketed the valley wasn't peaceful anymore. It was hollow. It was as though the dreams had stopped visiting. As though the kingdom of sleep had drawn its curtains. On this peculiar night, when the moon was round and glowed like a soft lantern, something strange happened. A boy named Elliot sat by his window, his small chin resting in his palm, his thoughts flickering like the candle beside him. He wasn't old, just 10, but he carried a weight on his shoulders heavier than most. His parents, like the others in Liltmere, rarely smiled now. His teacher sighed more than she spoke. Even his baby sister, Lila, cried in her sleep. So Elliot stayed awake. He watched the moon through his dusty window, not expecting anything, just listening to the silence that wasn't truly silent. That's when he saw it. A shimmer. Like a feather made of silver light, slowly drifting down from the sky. It twirled, weightless, glowing faintly against the night. Elliot rubbed his eyes, thinking it a trick of fatigue. But the shimmer grew closer, brighter, and finally, softly, it landed on the windowsill with the gentlest sound, like a sigh. It was a scroll, rolled tightly and tied with a thread of starlight. Elliot's fingers trembled as he picked it up. The moment he touched it, he felt warmth travel through him, like falling asleep in a blanket just pulled from the sun. He untied the thread, and the scroll unraveled on its own, revealing delicate writing that shimmered like frost in moonlight. To the dreamless ones in the village below, I am the moon. I have watched over you with love for countless nights. But lately, your dreams have grown silent, and the paths to the kingdom of sleep have grown over with shadow. This must change. This letter is the first of many. It is a key, a whisper, a lantern in the fog. Let it guide you back. Rest well, little dreamer. More is coming. With the light of stars. The moon. Elliot stared at the scroll, his breath caught between wonder and disbelief. The moon had written to him, to his village, to the lost dreamers. Something deep inside him stirred, something he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't fear or worry. It was calm. He looked up at the moon again, and this time, he thought he saw her smiling. And so, with the scroll still in his hands, Elliot climbed into bed, pulled the blanket over his shoulders, and closed his eyes. That night, for the first time in many moons, he dreamed. And far above, in the skies of forever, the moon dipped her pen into stardust once more, ready to write the second letter. The morning after Elliot received the moon's letter, something felt different in the village of Liltmere. The fog that usually hovered in the valley like a tired sigh was thinner, softer, as if it, too, had slept well. The birds sang not just out of duty, but with something that sounded very close to joy. And the breeze, which had lately felt cold and hurried, was now warm and slow, like it had remembered how to hum lullabies. But no one noticed. No one except Elliot. He awoke with the strange, lovely sensation that his heart had traveled somewhere during the night, somewhere soft and glowing and kind. The memory of the dream faded quickly, as dreams do, but it left behind the scent of wildflowers and stardust, and something else too, a quiet message that echoed in his chest like a heartbeat. When he sat up and reached for the scroll, it was gone. In its place, folded neatly at the foot of his bed, was something new, a map. But not just any map. This one was made of silk, impossibly smooth, and shimmered like moonlight trapped in fabric. The ink wasn't black or blue, it was silver, the kind of silver only stars know how to make. The edges curled slightly, like they had been warmed by firelight. Across its surface were unfamiliar symbols and shapes, drawn in delicate curves and soft spirals. A river that flowed upward. Mountains shaped like sleeping faces. A bridge made entirely of clouds. In the corner, in the same gentle handwriting as the letter, was written, "To the one who dared to believe, this is your path. Follow the whispers. Listen in the stillness. Dream deeply, and the way will open." The moon. Elliot's hands shook as he traced the glowing path on the map. Where did it lead? What did it mean? Suddenly, he heard a soft rustling behind him. He turned. His baby sister, Lila, was sitting in her crib, smiling. That was unusual. Lila had not smiled in weeks. Not since she had fallen sick, and even the doctors couldn't explain why her eyes stayed so tired. But now, her cheeks were flushed with warmth, and her gaze was bright and far away, as if she, too, had dreamed of somewhere beautiful. Elliot crawled to her side and leaned over the crib. "Did you see it too?" he whispered. Lila giggled and pointed at the window. Outside, the sunlight bounced gently across the hills, but Elliot's eyes weren't looking at the light. He was listening to something faint. A hush, a murmur, a whisper just beneath the wind. He quickly turned back to the map and studied it again. The line from his house curved through the village, crossed the woods, and led to the old bell tower at the edge of the valley, the one that hadn't rung in years. The bell tower had once signaled bedtime for the whole village. When it rang, windows would close, candles would dim, and children would scamper into beds giggling and yawning. But over time, people stopped listening. The bell had fallen silent, forgotten. But now, the map led directly to it. Elliot tucked the shimmering silk into his coat pocket, kissed his sister on the forehead, and tiptoed outside. The air smelled like sleep and secrets. He passed by Mrs. Willow's bakery, where warm bread once promised comfort but now sat untouched. He waved at old Mr. Thatch, who blinked slowly from his porch, sensing something was different but unable to say what. As Elliot walked, the whispers grew stronger. Not loud, but steady, like a river underground, calling his name softly. He followed the path the map had shown, past the frost-kissed trees and over the stony stream. And then, he reached the bell tower. It stood crooked and tired, its wooden bones creaking in the breeze. Vines curled around its base like sleepy fingers. But Elliot stepped inside without hesitation. Dust swirled in the air like golden snowflakes. The stairs spiraled upward, narrow and steep, but Elliot climbed, guided by a strange certainty. At the top, where the old bell rested in silence, Elliot found something impossible. Another scroll. This one was smaller, tied with a thread that glowed faintly like a candle about to go out. When he opened it, there were only 5 words. "The second letter has arrived." And with those words, Elliot knew the journey had begun. The bell tower creaked gently as Elliot stood at the top, scroll in hand, heart pounding like a soft drum in a quiet night. The second letter had arrived. But it wasn't like the first. There were no poetic verses or comforting promises, just 5 words and a whisper in the wind. He looked around the room. The large bronze bell loomed above him, coated in dust and silence. The floorboards beneath his feet were worn smooth by time, and cobwebs stretched like sleepy hammocks between the rafters. For a moment, Elliot wasn't sure what to do. Then he heard it again, a faint sound, not quite a word, but a feeling. Like a sigh remembered from a dream. It came from beneath the floor. Cautiously, Elliot knelt and ran his fingers over the wooden boards until he found a loose one. He pulled it up and discovered a hollow space underneath, lined with velvet so dark it looked like the night itself. Nestled inside was a small lantern. It was unlike anything Elliot had ever seen. The lantern was shaped like a teardrop and glowed with a soft, silvery light that pulsed gently, almost like it was breathing. It didn't burn with fire, but with something softer. Dreamlight, perhaps. A flame made of all the dreams that hadn't yet been dreamed. As he lifted it, the light expanded, spilling out in slow, warm waves that wrapped around him like a lullaby. The whisper in the wind returned, clearer this time. A voice, not loud, but certain. "You have found the sleepkeeper's lantern. It was left long ago for the one who would carry the moon's message. Light the way, carry it gently, and protect what sleeps." Elliot's breath caught. He didn't know what a sleepkeeper was, but something inside him stirred an ancient feeling, like remembering something he had never known. His hands wrapped around the lantern carefully, and as he stood, the light shimmered across the walls of the bell tower, revealing something that had gone unnoticed before. Words. Written in that same silver ink. Painted in a wide circle around the base of the bell. "When silence falls, ring the bell. Let the light remind them." Elliot looked up at the bell, now aglow in the lantern's light. Dust drifted like snowfall. He reached out and pulled the rusted rope with all his strength. The bell groaned. Then it rang. The sound rolled across the valley like a wave of memory. It was deep and warm, not loud but unmistakable, like the hum of a bedtime story spoken by the stars. And something changed. Windows opened. Curtains fluttered. People looked up from their glowing screens, from their piles of unfinished work, from their restless hearts. They didn't know why, but they paused. They listened. And in that stillness, the whisper returned, not only for Elliot, but for every soul who had forgotten how to rest. "The journey has begun. Sleep is not far. The moon has written, and the kingdom is listening." Back in the bell tower, Elliot felt the lantern grow slightly warmer in his hands, as though approving. He looked out over the village and, for the first time in many nights, saw peace begin to return. Not in full. Not yet. But like the first stars at twilight, small, quiet signs that the darkness was ready to soften. And far, far above, the moon smiled once more. She had sent her letter. Elliot had heard. Now the path was open. And the next part of the dream was waiting. The night after Elliot rang the bell tower, the stars shone a little brighter. Something invisible yet unmistakable had stirred in Liltmere. Though the villagers could not explain it, they found themselves blinking longer, sighing deeper, and setting down their worries just a little sooner. No one said it aloud, but dreams, gentle, glowing dreams, had begun to seep back into their hearts like water returning to a thirsty stream. But for Elliot, the world had shifted entirely. He kept the sleepkeeper's lantern hidden in his satchel during the day, though its soft pulse still warmed him through the fabric. At night, it glowed brighter and led him to the map again, the shimmering silk that now changed daily, as though it too was alive and dreaming. On the second night, Elliot unrolled the map and gasped. A new line had appeared. This one curled like a ribbon of wind, winding through a place he'd never dared to explore before, the Thistlegrove Woods. The forest had always been thick with shadow and strange murmurs. Most children avoided it. But the moon's path was clear, silver-threaded and soft, laid gently across the trees like a feather dropped from the sky. So, the next day, Elliot waited until the sun began to sink behind the hills, and then, with the lantern tucked close and the map in his coat, he stepped into the woods. At first, it was like stepping into an old book where the ink had begun to fade. The air grew quiet. Trees rose tall on either side, their branches arching above him like cathedral ceilings. Moss cushioned his every step, and the world smelled of earth and rain and something deeper, like the scent of dreams long forgotten. Elliot followed the path as the lantern glowed brighter, casting a soft pool of silver light around him. As he walked, he began to notice feathers, small ones at first, drifting lazily in the air like snowflakes. Each was different, some white as clouds, others speckled like starlight, a few as dark as velvet night. They hung in the air longer than they should have, suspended by something unseen. The further he walked, the more feathers appeared. They were caught in branches, nestled between stones, dancing in tiny spirals. Then, just beyond a cluster of willow trees, Elliot found a circle of feathers on the ground, dozens of them, arranged in a perfect spiral. In the very center lay a stone no bigger than an apple, smooth and glowing faintly blue. Elliot knelt and reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the stone, the forest stirred. Wind rustled the trees with a sudden breath. A hush fell over the woods. Then, from the branches above, something descended. A creature, light as air, graceful as shadow. It wasn't frightening, it was beautiful. It looked like a bird, but not quite. Its wings were made of soft light, layered in feathers that shimmered with every shade of moonlight. Its eyes were gentle and ancient, and its voice, when it spoke, was quieter than the wind. "You carry the lantern. You carry the moon's wish." Elliot nodded, heart thudding in wonder. "Who are you?" he whispered. The creature stepped lightly into the circle. "I am a feather warden. One of many. Long ago, we guided dreamers to the kingdom of sleep. But the paths have grown tangled, the way forgotten." It leaned closer, its breath like lullabies. "Until now." The creature lifted one wing and pointed toward the horizon where the trees thinned. "Follow the feathers. They know the way. But listen closely, each path must be walked with trust, not haste. Rest when the dream asks. You are not racing. You are returning." Elliot stood slowly, tucking the stone into his pocket. "I'll go," he said. "I'll follow." The feather warden nodded once, then rose into the air, vanishing in a scatter of light and wind. Elliot looked ahead. Beyond the woods, the path shimmered faintly across a moonlit meadow. A trail of feathers danced across the grass, waiting for him. He adjusted his satchel, tightened his scarf, and followed the path deeper into the night. Above him, the moon kept writing, her next letter almost ready. And the kingdom of sleep waited, patient and quiet, like a lullaby yet to be sung. Elliot followed the trail of feathers deep into the meadow, where the grass swayed like sea waves beneath the quiet hush of twilight. The lantern at his side glowed steadily, a faithful companion, casting pale silver pools of light across the path ahead. Though he walked alone, Elliot felt no fear. Something within him had changed, he no longer doubted the journey. The map, which he had unrolled earlier, had shown the next landmark in a soft glow, the singing bridge. No one in Liltmere had ever spoken of a singing bridge. In fact, there were no bridges near the village at all, or so he had believed. But the moon's letters were not bound by what the village remembered. They were written in the language of dreams and starlight, and dreams often held truths that waking minds forgot. The meadow opened into a quiet valley, and there, at the edge of a shallow ravine, stood the bridge. It was unlike anything Elliot had imagined. Suspended on air rather than stone, the bridge shimmered with threads of light, woven from mist and memory. It arched gracefully over a ravine filled not with water, but with clouds, soft, thick, and glowing faintly from below. The sides of the bridge were lined with wind chimes, feathers, and tiny silver bells. Each step Elliot took across the planks caused a gentle song to rise, like footsteps across a lullaby. He paused at the edge, awestruck. As soon as he stepped on the first plank, the air filled with soft music. Not loud, not urgent, just quiet notes, rising and falling, like a memory being gently replayed. The notes didn't sound like instruments he'd heard before. They sounded like sighs, like whispers of stories once told to a half-asleep child. Every step he took across the bridge sang a new note, and together they wove a melody, one that seemed to remember him. The bridge was singing his dream. As Elliot walked farther, the notes began to shape images in his mind. He saw his mother's lullaby, softly hummed on rainy nights. He saw the first book he'd ever read by candlelight. He saw his sister, Lila, asleep with her hand curled around a stuffed moon rabbit. And, like a ghost in the mist, he saw a younger version of himself, curled on a windowsill, wishing for the stars to notice him. Elliot blinked back tears. The bridge wasn't just singing, it was remembering. Every dream he had forgotten. Every night when he had stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep, hoping for something to change, it had all been stored in the music. Halfway across, the song paused. The air went still. Even the mist below the bridge stilled its swirling. Then, from within the clouds beneath, a voice rose. Not a child's voice, not the feather warden's, but something old, gentle and echoing, as though it had traveled 1,000 years just to speak now. You walk the path between the waking and the dreaming, Elliot of Liltmere. You carry the lantern. You carry the song. But even dreamers must choose. Elliot stood very still. What must I choose? He asked softly. The voice replied. To carry the dreams of others, you must first open your own. Are you willing to remember the dreams you buried? Elliot hesitated. There were dreams he had hidden. One of being brave. One of saving someone. One of being seen. He had tucked them away when the world grew too loud, too dark. But standing on this bridge of stars and sound, with the mist swirling below and the lantern glowing at his side, he knew the answer. Yes, he whispered. I will remember. The bridge sighed, like a mother kissing a sleeping child's brow. The song resumed, this time fuller, brighter. And beneath his feet, the bridge became more solid, as if the music had turned into something real, something earned. At the far end of the bridge stood a pedestal made of dreamstone. Upon it, resting in a cradle of feathers, was the third scroll. Elliot picked it up with reverence. To the one who remembers. You are no longer only a boy. You are a carrier of quiet, a keeper of sleep's light. Let this letter guide you deeper. There are hearts still waiting to rest, and dreams still waiting to rise. Do not rush. Even stars take time to shine. The moon. Elliot pressed the scroll to his chest. Then he looked up. Beyond the bridge, the world shimmered with promise. Trees with silver bark whispered in the wind. A path of stones shaped like sleeping faces led to a grove bathed in blue light. Somewhere ahead, the next part of the moon's message waited. And with the lantern in his hand and the scroll in his heart, Elliot stepped forward toward dreams, toward sleep, and toward something more than he had ever imagined. The path beyond the singing bridge felt different, warmer, quieter, as though the world was wrapped in a deep hush. Elliot stepped carefully, the sleep-keeper's lantern swinging gently in his hand, casting soft rings of moonlight over the earth. His heart, though tired from the long journey, beat steadily with a sense of growing purpose. As he moved forward, the stars above thickened, clustering like curious eyes peeking through velvet. The trees around him changed, too. Their bark was pale silver, smooth and unmarked, and their leaves glowed with a soft internal light that pulsed slowly like the calm breathing of someone peacefully asleep. He had entered the grove of resting echoes. The grove was unlike any place Elliot had ever known. There was no wind here, no rustling of leaves, no sound of animals stirring in the brush. And yet, it wasn't silent. It was filled with echoes, not of voices or footsteps, but of emotions. Soft sadnesses, quiet hopes, forgotten songs. Elliot paused beside one of the trees. Its trunk curved inward like an embrace, and when he placed his hand against it, a sound fluttered in his ears, a distant giggle. A child's laugh, clear and full of delight. It felt like it had happened long ago, but not to him, to someone else. Someone who had once passed this way. Another tree offered a hum, like a lullaby from a faraway parent. Another shimmered with the slow, steady rhythm of someone breathing deeply in sleep. These were not normal echoes. They were dream echoes, traces left behind by all those who had once passed into the kingdom of sleep. And now, Elliot was among them. He walked gently, feeling as if every footstep touched something sacred. The lantern seemed to know the way, tilting gently in his hand whenever the path veered. As he followed it, the grove deepened, the trees leaning closer together until they formed a kind of cathedral of sleep. High above, branches entwined to make a roof of stars. At the very center of the grove, Elliot found something extraordinary. A single stone platform, round and smooth, sat in a ring of trees. Upon it lay a circular pool, no bigger than a dinner plate, filled with something that shimmered, not quite water, not quite light. The pool of dreaming echoes. As Elliot approached, the lantern pulsed with warmth, and the pool responded, glowing brighter. He knelt beside it. The surface was still, yet as he gazed into it, images began to form, not just images, but feelings. He saw a girl curled beneath a heavy quilt, her heart aching from a sorrow she hadn't spoken aloud. He saw a man staring at the ceiling, weighed down by worry and silence. He saw a grandmother knitting in the dark, whispering to a photo of someone she missed. And then he saw Lila, his baby sister, eyes closed, breathing shallowly in her crib. Her dreams were faint, almost invisible, like smoke slipping through fingers. Elliot's eyes filled with tears. He hadn't known how far the sleeplessness had reached. It wasn't just his village. It was everyone. Dreamers everywhere, drifting without direction, caught between wakefulness and rest. And the moon had seen it all. The pool shimmered again, and a scroll rose slowly from its center, as if lifted by invisible hands. Elliot reached forward and took it with trembling fingers. The fourth letter. He unrolled it gently. The paper was warmer this time, as though it had been held close by someone who loved him deeply. To the one who listens. The echoes you hear are not just stories, they are invitations. Each dream you witness, each breath you feel, is a reminder that even the smallest rest is sacred. Carry these echoes with you. Let them guide your steps. You are not just following the path, you are becoming part of it. Rest now, if only for a moment. The road ahead winds deeper into the heart of dreaming. But even lantern bearers must sleep. Close your eyes. Just for a little while. The moon. Elliot didn't resist. He curled up beside the pool, the lantern resting against his chest. The echoes around him sang quietly, a soft lullaby carried through ancient trees. The stars above blinked slower. The silver leaves whispered gently in time with his breathing. And for the first time on this journey, Elliot allowed himself to sleep. Not because he was tired, but because he had been invited. And in that sleep, something began to change within him. The boy was becoming a guide, a sleep keeper, a bridge between the waking world and the kingdom of sleep. Elliot slept beneath the stars, and though his body rested in the grove of resting echoes, his dream was no ordinary one. It felt deeper, more vivid, like stepping into the folds of the moon's own memory. In his sleep, he walked barefoot across the surface of clouds. He heard lullabies whispered by unseen voices and glimpsed doorways formed from stardust and forgotten songs. He dreamed not only for himself, but for all who could not. When he woke, the grove was quiet, the lantern still warm at his side. The fourth scroll lay beside him, its silver script fading slowly, as though its words had been absorbed into his very breath. He sat up and blinked. Something new had appeared. In the center of the grove, where the pool of dreaming echoes had been, there now stood a tree. Towering, ageless, beautiful. Its bark shimmered like silk, and its leaves, large and round, glowed faintly with pearly light. The trunk was smooth, but its base had curved inward to form a cradle, a soft hollow filled with glowing moss and feathers. It was the cradle tree, and beneath its roots was a staircase. Elliot stepped closer, marveling at the sight. The staircase spiraled downward into the earth, made not of stone or wood but of polished moonlight, each step pulsing faintly beneath his feet, as though counting his presence. The lantern in his hand flared briefly, casting long shadows behind him. He took a deep breath, and he descended. The air grew cooler the deeper he went, not cold, but still like the space between heartbeats. The sound of the world above faded, replaced by the gentle hum of the staircase itself, as if the path was singing a song only the brave could hear. As he walked, Elliot passed small carvings in the tunnel walls, dream catchers spun from ivy and silver thread, pictures of sleepers held safely in moonlight, stars drawn with eyes wide open, watching over quiet hearts. Each carving told a story, and each story hummed with memory. He had walked for what felt like hours when the staircase ended in a vast chamber. The ceiling arched high above, filled with floating lights like drifting fireflies, but slower, sleepier. In the center of the room stood a pedestal of stone carved with gentle waves, and upon it rested a large book. Elliot approached cautiously. The book opened on its own. Its pages flipped softly, revealing page after page of names, each written in the moon's silver handwriting. Elliot's eyes widened as he realized what it was. The ledger of lost sleep. Each name belonged to someone who had not truly rested. Children burdened by fears. Adults lost in worry. Elders haunted by memories. It was not a list of blame, but of gentle remembrance, a record of every soul who longed to sleep but could not. He turned another page. There, his name, Elliot of Liltmere, and just below it, softly glowing, was his sister's name, Lila of Liltmere. His hands shook slightly as he traced the letters. Then, beneath both names, a soft glow began to rise. Letters began to write themselves, carrying the lantern, opening the path, resting in the grove, remembering the dreams, trusting the bridge. Listening to echoes, Elliot gasped softly. The book was tracking his journey, not in distance or time, but in moments of sleep restored, dream awakened, hope rekindled, and he had only just begun. Suddenly, from the ceiling above, a glowing ribbon of light floated downward like a falling leaf. It hovered in front of Elliot, curling slightly before transforming into a scroll, gentler than the others, wrapped in a silky thread of twilight. The fifth letter. He opened it slowly, reverently. To the one who watches over the restless, you have descended into memory and found the ledger of sleepless souls. You now carry not only your own dreams but the weight of others. Do not fear it. The burden of dreams is lighter than sorrow, softer than fear. Ahead lies more silence, more wonder. But tonight, remember this, you are no longer alone. The dreams you protect are awake, and the kingdom of sleep sees you. Let the cradle tree rise behind you. Let your feet find the next hush. Sleep when you can, dream when you must. The moon. Elliot closed the scroll and looked around the quiet chamber. The floating lights above pulsed softly in rhythm with his breath. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't even tired. He was ready. He turned, climbed the staircase once more, and when he emerged from beneath the cradle tree, the grove had changed. The leaves shimmered like polished glass. The stars had rearranged themselves in a pattern above, like the number 6, glowing faintly in silver light. The next letter was waiting, and Elliot stepped forward to find it. When Elliot stepped out from beneath the cradle tree, the grove behind him slowly began to dim. The leaves no longer pulsed, and the tree's cradle gently folded inward, becoming still once more, almost as if it, too, had fallen into a well-earned slumber. Above him, the stars shimmered in a new pattern, tracing gentle curves that pointed northward, toward an open clearing bathed in soft twilight. He followed. The path was lined now with tiny glowing pebbles, each one ticking faintly, like the smallest heartbeat of a sleeping world. They led him to a wide meadow unlike any he had seen before. It stretched out in perfect stillness, wrapped in fog and moonlight. At the center of this strange and wondrous place stood a garden, but not a garden of flowers or trees. It was a clock garden. Dozens, no, hundreds of clocks bloomed from the earth like strange metallic flowers. Some were tall, grandfather clocks with pendulums swaying slowly in silent arcs. Others were pocket watches balanced delicately on twisting stems. There were sundials carved from crystal, cuckoo clocks that ticked without birds, and glass domes that held floating minute hands, suspended in still time. The entire garden ticked in slow rhythm, not rushed, not rigid like a song drifting through sleep. Elliot stepped into the garden, the lantern casting a warm glow that seemed to make the clocks glow in return. The moment he did, all the ticking aligned. The entire garden shifted into a gentle tempo, like a choir finding harmony. He froze in awe, listening. And then came the voice, not booming or loud, but as calm and inevitable as sunrise. "Welcome, bearer of the lantern. Time has been waiting for you." Elliot turned. Emerging from the mist was a figure. Tall, draped in robes woven from stars and dust, the figure's face was partly hidden beneath the wide brim of a hat shaped like a crescent moon. In their hands, they carried a long staff with an hourglass suspended in its top. Sand flowed not down, but upward, never ending. "Are you a guardian?" Elliot asked softly. The figure nodded. "I am the keeper of drowsing time. This is the garden of paused dreams and wandering hours. Every clock you see once belonged to someone who lost their way into rest." Elliot looked around at the endless timepieces, suddenly feeling the vastness of the task before him. "Why are there so many?" he asked. The keeper walked slowly beside him, their robes brushing the grass without sound. "Because the world has forgotten how to stop," the keeper replied. "Time is now measured by screens and schedules, not by silence and moonlight. Rest is a stranger to many. Here, the clocks sleep until their dreamers return." They paused beside a small bronze clock, ticking faintly. "This one belongs to a young girl who once dreamed of a paper ship sailing the clouds. But now she lies in bed each night, eyes wide, afraid of the dark thoughts in her mind." The keeper turned to Elliot. "The clocks await you. Your lantern can wake them." Elliot's breath caught. "Me?" The keeper held out their staff, and Elliot's lantern pulsed gently in response. "You are not just a dreamer now. You are a rest bringer. A gentle light in the dark. You carry not only sleep, but the courage to welcome it. Come, try." The keeper led him to a glass clock lying quietly on its side. Inside, a silver minute hand floated, unmoving. "This clock," the keeper said, "belongs to someone in your village. A boy who no longer dreams because he fears his imagination." Elliot knelt beside the clock, placed the lantern gently on its surface, and whispered, "You are safe to sleep." At once, the minute hand stirred. It turned slowly, then steadily. A soft chime echoed through the garden, a sound like the first deep breath after tears. All around, a few other clocks ticked louder, stirred by the ripple of rest. Elliot gasped. "Did I do that?" The keeper smiled faintly. "You reminded it. That is the task of the sleep keeper." From the air above them, a spiral of starlight began to form. It circled Elliot slowly, then descended, coalescing into the sixth scroll. It floated gently into his hands, still warm with the hush of time. He opened it. "To the one who slowed the world. You have entered the place where time learns to breathe. You now understand, rest is not wasteful. It is healing. Sacred. A return to the self. Let the ticking guide you not with urgency, but with kindness. Slow your thoughts, soften your steps, and sleep will come as surely as moonrise. The clocks have started to stir. Let them ring again." The moon. Elliot stood in the middle of the garden, the scroll in one hand, the lantern in the other. The keeper of drowsing time raised their staff and touched Elliot gently on the shoulder. "You will find the seventh letter beyond the horizon," the keeper said. "Follow the windswept path of dreams. And when you hear silence too loud to bear, listen closely. That is where the next voice waits." Elliot bowed gratefully, heart full. He turned from the garden, the ticking slowly fading behind him. Ahead, the stars stretched in a silver path across the sky, and the clocks whispered his name as he walked onward. The night deepened, but Elliot walked on. The stars above had formed a quiet procession, gently guiding him along the windswept path that curved like a sleeping serpent through silver hills and soft shadow. The sleepkeeper's lantern bobbed gently at his side, its light no longer just a tool, but a companion, a quiet guardian of his every step. His breath was calm, and his thoughts, once filled with questions, now moved like slow rivers, deep and steady. The seventh destination had not been shown clearly on the map. Only a phrase had been etched into the margin of the sixth scroll. Where lullabies no longer live, go there. And so, Elliot had followed the hush in the wind. As he walked, the land began to shift again. The ground beneath his feet turned from soft moss to cobbled stones, cracked and overgrown. The sky above was blanketed in clouds that moved too slowly, like a dream resisting dawn. A gentle fog curled low to the earth, clinging to old forgotten things. And then he saw it. At the edge of a crooked field stood a house. It was worn but proud, with a steep roof and windows like tired eyes. Vines crawled up the sides like fingers trying to hold on, and the chimney let out no smoke. A soft amber glow flickered in the upstairs window, blinking as if it wasn't sure it should stay awake. Elliot stepped closer. The wooden sign that once hung over the porch had fallen and cracked, but the words were still legible beneath the dust. The House of Forgotten Bedtimes. Elliot shivered, not from fear, but from the sorrow that drifted around the house like fog. It wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was haunted by absence. He stepped through the door. Inside, the house was filled with silence so complete, it seemed to press on his skin. The floorboards groaned beneath his weight, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and something older, like old blankets stored away too long. There were rooms, many of them. Each room was a child's bedroom. Some were filled with books stacked high and forgotten. Others had toys strewn across the floor, frozen mid-play. A few had music boxes that had stopped mid-song. But all of them had the same thing in common. The beds were untouched. No one had tucked the blankets. No one had whispered good night. The pillows looked flat and unused. The walls, once painted with stars and dreams, were dull now. And in every room, Elliot saw the same thing. A faint shimmer near the bed, a memory suspended in time. A bedtime story that had never been finished. A lullaby left mid-verse. A kiss that had been delayed and forgotten. He wandered slowly through the house, lantern in hand, touching nothing but feeling everything. And then, on the second floor, he found the nursery. There were no children. But there was a rocking chair, gently moving on its own. And in it sat a figure, not quite real, not quite shadow. She looked like a mother made of moonlight and worry, her face both kind and blurred. She looked up as Elliot entered. "You're late," she said softly, not accusing, just tired. But I suppose no dream ever truly arrives on time. Elliot stepped closer. "Are you one of the moon's guardians?" She smiled faintly. "Once. I was the night teller. I whispered the final words children heard before sleep. But they stopped listening. Bedtimes faded. My voice grew quiet." She looked around the nursery. "Now I sit here and rock between the lines of memory, waiting for someone to remind the world that good nights matter." Elliot's chest ached. He walked to the rocking chair and knelt beside her. The lantern's light brushed against her hand, and she sighed, as though its warmth soothed something old and aching. "You've come with the letters, haven't you?" she asked. Elliot nodded. "I've found 6. I was told the 7th was where lullabies no longer live." She placed something small and soft in his hand. A piece of paper, folded like a note, passed under a pillow. "Then here is the 7th, she said. "But you must do one more thing before you go." He unfolded the scroll slowly, but she stopped him with her eyes. "You must finish a bedtime." She pointed to a nearby crib. Elliot stood, walked to it. Inside lay a memory, not a child, but the shape of one, made from light and mist, curled beneath an untouched blanket. He didn't need to think. He reached into his memory and whispered, "Good night, little one. The stars are your window, the moon is your friend. The world will wait while you rest. Sleep now, and dream gently." The mist in the crib sighed and shimmered, then slowly faded into soft starlight. When Elliot turned, the night teller was smiling, her form growing clearer. "Thank you," she whispered. "You reminded the house that it still matters." The walls brightened. The lullabies stirred in the floorboards. The very air hummed with a soft return. And the scroll in Elliot's hand unfurled on its own. To the one who said good night. You stepped into the silence and spoke again. You remembered that bedtime is not a task, but a ritual, a gift. Where your voice landed, sleep followed. Where your kindness lingered, dreams returned. Carry this letter not just for yourself, but for those who whisper alone in the dark. Tuck them in with hope. The moon. Elliot stepped out of the house of forgotten bedtimes, the scroll now folded close to his heart. Above, a new star blinked into the sky, and the night, for the first time in a long while, felt like it was finally going to sleep. After leaving the house of forgotten bedtimes, Elliot walked under a sky speckled with shimmering stars that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. The seventh letter nestled safely in his pocket, its warmth a quiet reminder of the promises he carried. Ahead lay the next part of his journey, a place known only in whispered stories, half remembered and almost forgotten, the Valley of Quiet Wishes. As Elliot approached, the air itself seemed to soften. The wind hushed to a gentle breath, and even the earth beneath his feet felt like velvet. The valley stretched wide before him, cradled by hills that curved like gentle arms, and blanketed in a thick mist that glowed faintly silver under the moonlight. The valley was a place of silence, not the kind that presses or frightens, but a peaceful hush, the kind that invites hearts to listen. Elliot stepped carefully, his lantern casting a tender glow over the mist, revealing small shapes, glimmers floating gently, like fireflies but softer. He soon realized these were wishes, tiny, fragile hopes that had been whispered quietly, too shy or afraid to be spoken aloud. Each one hung in the air like a delicate bubble, shimmering and fragile. Some wishes were bright and hopeful, like a child wishing for morning to come faster so they could see their mother's smile. Others were dimmer, almost fading, like a tired man wishing for one last moment of peace. And some carried a gentle sorrow, like a mother who wished her lost child could dream again. Elliot reached out and touched a small glowing orb. As his fingers brushed its surface, the wish inside blossomed into a soft song, a lullaby of hope and longing. It sang of rest and healing and the quiet power of simply being seen. The valley seemed alive with these whispered dreams, each one a thread in the tapestry of the night. Suddenly, a voice drifted through the stillness, not spoken aloud, but felt deep within. "Welcome, Keeper of Light. You have come to the heart of wishes and the cradle of hopes." Elliot turned to see a figure emerging from the mist. She was robed in flowing silver, her eyes reflecting every star in the sky. In her hands, she held a bowl carved from moonstone, filled with sparkling liquid. "I am the wisher of quiet. I tend to those who have forgotten to speak their dreams aloud." Elliot nodded, understanding the sacredness of this place. "How can I help?" he asked softly. The wisher smiled and lifted the bowl. "You must gather the wishes, not to take them, but to protect them, to carry them forward, so they may one day grow into dreams." She reached out, and with a gentle touch, the glowing orbs floated toward Elliot, weaving themselves into a delicate cloak of light around his shoulders. "Wear this," she said, "and let it remind you that every wish, no matter how small or quiet, is a seed for rest and peace." Elliot felt warmth spread through him, a comfort deeper than any sleep. "There is one more gift for you," the wisher said, reaching into her cloak. She handed Elliot a small silver key, inscribed with a crescent moon and stars. "This key opens the gate of soft return, a passage you will need when your journey is ready to come full circle." Elliot accepted the key with reverence. As the mist thickened and the valley grew quiet once more, The 8th scroll floated down gently from the sky, landing softly in his hand. He unrolled it, and the moon's familiar handwriting glowed softly under the lantern's light. To the one who carries quiet wishes, you have gathered the seeds of tomorrow's dreams. Remember, each wish is a fragile light in the dark. Guard them well, nurture them gently, and when the time comes, they will bloom. Your path winds ever onward, deeper into the heart of sleep. Walk it with patience and courage. The moon. Elliot folded the scroll carefully and looked up at the night sky. The stars shone like never before, a promise etched in silver light. And with the cloak of wishes wrapped around him and the key in his palm, he stepped forward into the silent night, ready to answer the moon's next call. Elliot's footsteps were soft as he walked deeper into the night, the cloak of quiet wishes shimmering faintly with each step. The silver key weighed lightly in his hand, a promise of mysteries yet to come. The valley of quiet wishes faded behind him like a whispered secret, and the path ahead curved through darkened woods where shadows seemed to breathe. The trees here were tall and slender, their branches woven tightly together so that moonlight barely touched the forest floor. The air was thick with the scent of night blossoms, flowers that bloomed only in dreams. As Elliot moved forward, he noticed that the shadows themselves were different here. They didn't simply fall behind objects. Instead, they seemed to shift and dance, murmuring softly like voices too faint to hear. This was the Garden of Whispering Shadows, a place where forgotten fears and unspoken thoughts found their home. It was said to be where the restless met their doubts before they could finally find peace. Elliot felt a chill, but he held the lantern higher, its gentle glow pushing back the darkness. From within the garden, the whispers grew clearer, not words, but feelings. Worries about being forgotten, fears of not being enough, sadness about the things left unsaid. Elliot realized that these shadows were not enemies, but lost parts of the heart needing to be heard. A figure stepped from the swirling dark, a woman cloaked in velvet night, her eyes deep pools of understanding. "I am the keeper of shadows," she said, voice as soft as the rustle of leaves. "Here, the shadows speak the truths we hide from ourselves." Elliot nodded slowly. "How do I help them?" The keeper smiled kindly. "You listen. Only by listening can the shadows be soothed and released." Together, they walked through the garden, the lantern's light weaving through the whispering shapes. Elliot knelt beside one shadow shaped like a small child, trembling with fear. He whispered gently, "It's okay to rest. You are safe now." The shadow shivered, then slowly faded into a soft glow. Each step Elliot took, more shadows softened, their whispers turning into quiet sighs. At the heart of the garden stood a silver tree, its branches heavy with tiny lanterns, each containing a single shadow waiting to be freed. Elliot reached out and touched one. The lantern flickered, and inside, he saw a memory, a moment of doubt from his own past, a time when he felt alone and afraid. Tears filled his eyes as he realized the journey was as much about healing himself as it was about helping others. The keeper handed him a small box, carved from starlight. "This is the vessel of release. Place the shadows here, and their burdens will lighten." Elliot nodded, carefully placing the glowing lanterns into the vessel one by one. Each time, the garden grew lighter, the shadows retreating like morning mist. When the last lantern was placed inside, the vessel sealed itself with a soft chime. From above, the 9th scroll drifted down, settling gently in Elliot's hand. He unrolled it, feeling the familiar warmth of the moon's words. "To the one who listens in the dark, you have carried the shadows from the hearts of many. In listening, you have helped them find their way to light. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the gentle holding of it. Ahead, the path will grow clearer, but the journey is far from over. Trust the light within." The moon. Elliot folded the scroll, the vessel of release warm in his grip. With renewed courage, he stepped from the garden's edge, the whispering shadows now silent and still. Above him, the stars brightened, guiding him onward toward the next step in the moon's letter. Elliot walked onward, leaving behind the garden of whispering shadows as the first hints of dawn kissed the horizon with soft pink and purple hues. The vessel of release remained secure in his satchel, and the cloak of quiet wishes shimmered gently beneath his cloak. The weight of the silver key was now a familiar comfort in his pocket, a promise yet to be unlocked. Before him stretched a vast valley veiled in morning mist, where the air smelled of cool water and distant stars. At the valley's heart flowed a river unlike any other, the river of silver dreams. Its waters sparkled like liquid moonlight, winding smoothly through the land like a ribbon of stardust. The surface rippled softly, reflecting countless dreams drifting gently downstream. Some were bright and vibrant, like shimmering fish darting just beneath the water's surface. Others were hazy and soft, like silk veils floating on the breeze. Elliot knelt by the riverbank, watching as dreams floated past him like gentle boats. Each one carried a story, a wish, a hope, a memory longing to find rest. As he dipped his fingers into the cool water, a voice echoed softly from the river's depths. "Bearer of the lantern, guardian of rest, you have come far." From the mist emerged a figure shimmering with the fluid grace of flowing water, a being both delicate and powerful. She wore a gown woven from moonbeams and river foam, her eyes reflecting the depths of dreams themselves. "I am the dream weaver of the river. The river carries the dreams of sleepers everywhere. But some dreams drift too far, lost in currents of worry and fear." Elliot stood and looked into her eyes. "How can I help the dreams find their way?" The dream weaver smiled softly. "By weaving the threads of rest and hope, you guide them back to sleep. You must sail the river's course, catching the dreams before they fade." She handed Elliot a small, silver boat, delicate and shining, with sails like woven moonlight. "This boat will carry your lantern and your heart. Place it on the river and follow where it leads." Elliot took the boat gently and set it upon the silver water. The lantern's light flickered as the boat began to drift, moving steadily downstream. He stepped carefully into a small wooden rowboat waiting at the shore, its oars light and balanced. As he rowed, the river sang a soft melody woven from the dreams themselves, flowing and ebbing like a gentle tide. Along the banks, he glimpsed scenes of hope and sorrow, laughter and tears, each dream a thread in the fabric of sleep. Sometimes the river grew wild, tossing his boat among churning currents of doubt and fear. But Elliot held firm, steadying the lantern's glow against the dark waves. At one bend, he saw a dream caught in a tangle of reeds, faint and flickering. He reached out with a trembling hand and freed it. The dream blossomed instantly into a radiant light, soaring above the river like a newly born star. Elliot smiled, feeling a quiet strength growing within him. Hours passed like moments, and finally, the river opened into a vast lake, calm and glassy under the full moon's gaze. At its center rose a small island, glowing softly with moonlight. The boat drifted toward the island, the lantern's glow brightening with hope. When Elliot stepped ashore, he found the 10th scroll waiting on a stone pedestal carved with swirling water patterns. He unrolled it with reverence. "To the one who sails the river of dreams, you have guided lost hopes back to rest and held the fragile light of peace. Know this, every dream you save strengthens the tide of sleep. Ahead, the path will lead you through shadows and light, but your heart shines as a beacon. Trust the river, trust yourself." The moon. Elliot folded the scroll and looked up at the sky. The stars shone brighter than ever, a map of silver light stretching toward the next adventure. With a deep breath and steady steps, he began to explore the island, ready for what lay ahead. Elliot stepped onto the island bathed in soft moonlight, the 10th scroll safely tucked in his pocket. The air here was still, fragrant with night-blooming jasmine and the faintest hint of honey. The gentle ripple of the lake's water whispered softly around the shore, inviting him inward. Before him stretched a garden unlike any Elliot had ever seen, a labyrinth made of walls that seemed woven from shimmering threads of mist and starlight. The paths glowed faintly, shifting as if alive, twisting gently like a slow, endless breath. This was the labyrinth of gentle dreams, a place said to hold the quiet mysteries of the heart and the secret doors to peaceful sleep. Elliot hesitated for a moment, then stepped into the labyrinth. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the world around him seemed to slow, the soft glow of the paths illuminating his way. The walls whispered in a language not quite words, a soothing hum that felt like a lullaby. As he walked, the labyrinth shifted, guiding him deeper into its maze. Each turn was a gentle challenge, sometimes a memory stirred, a fear to face, or a doubt to soften. Elliot paused often, listening closely to the quiet songs that played just beyond the edges of his thoughts. At one point, he came upon a mirror set into the wall, a surface that didn't reflect his face, but his dreams. There, he saw visions of himself, brave and tired, lost and hopeful, afraid and steady. The mirror didn't judge, it simply showed the truth. With a soft breath, Elliot stepped away and pressed forward. Deeper in the labyrinth, the paths grew narrower, the glow dimmer. A coldness brushed past him, a shadow of loneliness that clung like mist. But Elliot remembered the vessel of release and the cloak of wishes around his shoulders. He whispered a promise to himself, "I am not alone." At last, the labyrinth opened into a quiet chamber filled with floating lanterns, each glowing with a soft, silver light. The lanterns drifted like fireflies caught in a gentle breeze, illuminating the chamber with a peaceful glow. In the center stood a pedestal carved from moonstone, and upon it rested the 11th scroll. Elliot approached carefully, his heart steady. He reached out, took the scroll, and unrolled it beneath the glowing lantern's light. To the one who walks the labyrinth, the path to rest is winding and sometimes uncertain. Yet each step, no matter how small, brings you closer to peace. Remember to be gentle with yourself. Trust the rhythm of your breath, the quiet pulse of your heart. The journey continues, but you carry all you need within. The moon. Elliot folded the letter with care. As he looked around the chamber, the lanterns began to drift upward, carrying the soft light with them until the room was bathed in peaceful darkness once more. He stepped from the labyrinth with a newfound calm, feeling the slow pulse of sleep drawing nearer. The night stretched ahead, full of promise, as Elliot prepared to face the next part of the moon's letter. Elliot left the labyrinth of gentle dreams with a heart full of quiet peace. The letter he held glowed softly beneath the light of his lantern as he followed the winding path that led from the island back toward the world beyond the river of silver dreams. The air grew cooler and clearer, and the night sky stretched wide, studded with countless stars twinkling like tiny whispers of hope. Elliot felt drawn toward a distant hill rising gently against the horizon, a hill bathed in silver moonlight and crowned with a ring of ancient stones. This was the Hill of Quiet Stars, a sacred place where the wishes and dreams of countless sleepers had once been gathered and set free into the night sky. As Elliot climbed the soft slope, the stones around him hummed with a faint resonance, each one pulsing gently like the heartbeat of the world. The ground beneath his feet was soft, carpeted with midnight blue grass that swayed without a breeze. At the top of the hill, Elliot found a circle of great standing stones, each etched with symbols of moons, stars, and sleeping eyes. In the center stood a flat altar carved from smooth granite, glowing faintly with a pale blue light. He placed the scroll carefully on the altar. Instantly, the stones around him seemed to come alive, their gentle hum growing louder until it became a chorus of quiet music, like a lullaby sung by the stars themselves. Suddenly, from the sky above, a silver beam of moonlight descended, touching the altar and filling the entire hill with radiant light. Elliot felt a warmth spread through his body, a soothing energy that calmed every worry and fear. In that moment, the stars seemed to pulse in unison, sending waves of light rippling through the night. Elliot closed his eyes and listened. Within the silence, he heard the faintest whispers, voices of dreamers, children, and elders, all singing together in harmony. It was a song of rest, renewal, and gentle hope. When he opened his eyes, the 12th scroll floated down from the heavens, glowing softly in the moonlight. He took it and read the words written in silver ink. To the one who gathers the quiet stars, you stand at the center of many dreams, a beacon for those who seek peace. Remember, the light you carry is not just for yourself, but for all who long to rest. Let the stars guide you as you continue this journey, for the night is full of wonders yet to be found. The path ahead will lead you to new beginnings, where sleep and waking meet in delicate balance. The moon. Elliot folded the scroll and gazed up at the sky, feeling more connected than ever to the kingdom of sleep. The stars above twinkled brighter, as if acknowledging his presence. With steady steps, he began the descent from the hill of quiet stars, ready to follow the moon's guidance toward the next chapter of his journey. The descent from the hill of quiet stars led Elliot into a vast expanse known as the Field of Soft Echoes, a place where every whisper, every sigh, and every dream once spoken lingered gently in the air, carried on invisible currents that wove through tall grasses shimmering like spun silver. Elliot stepped into the field, feeling as if he had entered a living memory. The air was thick with the gentle hum of forgotten dreams, soft laughter, and quiet promises made in the dark. Each sound was delicate, like a fragile thread weaving through the fabric of night. As he walked slowly, Elliot noticed that the echoes took shape, faint glimmers of light dancing just beyond the corner of his eyes. Some floated lazily, others swirled in graceful spirals, all carrying the weight of a moment once treasured. He lifted his lantern, its warm glow mingling with the silver light of the field. With each step, the echoes grew clearer, unfolding stories of hope, comfort, and love whispered softly into the night. Suddenly, a gentle breeze stirred, and the echoes around Elliot formed into a shimmering figure, a woman draped in flowing robes of twilight, her eyes kind and knowing. "I am the guardian of echoes," she said in a voice that felt like a comforting melody. "These echoes are the heartbeat of memories, the remnants of dreams that still long to be heard." Elliot listened as she continued. "Many voices here are lost between waking and sleep, caught in moments of longing or regret. Your lantern can help carry these echoes to their rest." The guardian extended her hand, and a small harp woven from moonlight appeared, its strings humming softly. "Play with your heart," she urged. "Let the echoes find their song." Elliot took the harp, feeling its delicate weight in his hands. As he plucked the strings, a soft, soothing melody filled the air, weaving through the field like a balm. The echoes began to gather, their light intensifying, forming radiant patterns that floated upward, dissolving peacefully into the sky. With each note, memories once tangled in silence found their voice, releasing their gentle hold on the night. When the last note faded, the guardian smiled. "You have given rest to many." From the sky, the 13th scroll drifted down, glowing warmly. Elliot unrolled it, reading the moon's words. "To the one who sings the echoes. Your song has freed the memories held between moments. Remember, healing comes not only from sleep but from the gentle release of the past. Carry this lesson forward, for the journey still unfolds beneath the quiet stars. Trust the melody within your heart." The moon. Elliot folded the scroll carefully and felt the music still lingering softly in his soul. He turned from the field of soft echoes, his steps lighter and his spirit renewed, ready to continue the moon's letter with courage and grace. Elliot left the field of soft echoes behind, his heart filled with the gentle melody of the guardian's harp. The night air was crisp, and the stars above seemed to shine with renewed brilliance, guiding him onward through a landscape that shifted softly beneath the lantern's glow. Ahead stretched a river, wide and shimmering under the moonlight, its surface sparkling with countless silver threads woven together like a tapestry of light and shadow. This was the river of silent currents, and spanning it was the fabled bridge of silver threads, a delicate web of shimmering strands connecting two distant shores. Elliot approached the bridge with awe. The threads glowed softly, pulsing with an inner light that seemed alive. Each step onto the bridge felt like stepping into a dream itself, the strands shifting gently beneath his feet, humming with a quiet energy. As he crossed, the air around him filled with whispers, not words, but feelings, trust, hope, courage, and the quiet strength needed to carry on. Halfway across, a figure appeared, an ethereal being cloaked in gossamer light, her eyes reflecting the stars. "I am the weaver of the bridge," she said softly. "This bridge connects the waking world to the kingdom of sleep. It is a path of balance, where every thread holds a story, and every step is a promise. Elliot nodded, feeling the weight of her words. What must I do? He asked. The weaver smiled gently. Walk with intention. Each thread you touch strengthens the connection between dreams and reality. Your lantern's light is the key that keeps the threads shining. As Elliot moved carefully, the bridge shimmered brighter with every step, the silver threads weaving around him like a protective cloak. At the bridge's end, the weaver handed him a small spindle of shining thread. This is the thread of quiet strength, she explained. Carry it with you, and it will remind you that even the faintest light can guide the way through darkness. Elliot accepted the spindle, feeling its warmth seep into his hands. From above,